This would be our first demonstration of um, doing a problem statement with a decision in it. So let's take a look at what we have. You have to write a program for Tomato Farmer. They sell tomatoes by the pound only. They charge $2, except when a person buys more than 10 pounds. And then they charge $1 a pound. So they're going to be charged two different rates. Provide them with the number of pounds and the total amount. So the first thing we have to do is determine our output. And we get that from the last sentence normally. And they want us to do the number of pounds and the total amount. So let's go ahead and copy that. And I recommend you doing the same thing when you're doing the lessons and the assignment. So these are the two things they want: number of pounds and total amount. So we'll get rid of that. So these two things. So the next thing we have to determine is, where are we going to get these two things from? Well, total amount, we got to do some math for that. So I'm just going to copy this, Control C and Control V. All right, so there's my math. And then number of pounds, well, I'm not going to calculate that. That's something that someone has to tell me, how many pounds they purchased. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that and paste that into input. All right, so now that we have those two things, so total amount I'm going to have to make a calculation for, so I'll put an equal sign there. And now I'm going to go get my low-hanging fruit, which would be my constant. So I have a 2, a 10, and a 1. Those have to be placed in assumptions. And they're going to be placed at the bottom of the assumptions. So $2 is the normal rate, so we'll call that reg rate equals 2. Now you put the dollar sign because that's text, so I'm just going to leave it as a binary number. And then the LRG, we'll call it the large rate, and that's going to be equal to 1 when they make a large order. And then we have the 10, and that's going to be a, let's call that LRG for large cutoff. And that's going to be equal to 10. So now I have my three constants. I have my output, and I have what calculations I need, and one of my inputs. So great. So the next thing I'm going to have to do is figure out what this math is. So the math is going to be the number of pounds times whatever the rate is, and there's two different rates. So I'm just going to make it generic. So I'm going to say num pounds. That represents the number of pounds, and I'm going to multiply that by rate. And so I don't have anything that's rate and nothing that matches up here to rate because it's one of two. So that means that we're going to have to make a decision in order to figure out what the rate is. And I have num pounds, and that's not going to be a calculation. I'm going to have to ask them, well, how many pounds? So I'm going to copy this and paste it up here. So that's done. Now I just have to figure out the rate, and this thing is all done. So I'm going to say that if, whoops, and again I'm going to copy and paste, if num pounds, almost typed it there. You never want to do typing because I have to have these as exact same as both of these. And we use the greater than symbol. So the greater than symbol points to the right. And then if it's greater than, it'll be 10 pounds, but really it's greater than the large cutoff. Okay, we don't put any numbers in our calculations. If that is true, then the rate, and I'll copy that, is going to be equal to, if it's greater than 10, that's a large, so that's going to give the large rate. That's $1 a pound. If it's not true, we use the keyword else, and then the rate is equal to the regular rate. So if it's not greater than 10, and we'll do that. All right, so the next, that's not rate. So this next one is going to be the regular rate. So I'm going to copy regular rate and paste. And you might think you could type this without making an error, but you'll find out very quickly that it's very easy to make errors and not even be able to find them after you make them. Alright, so let's go ahead and make this a little prettier. Oops. And tighten this up. Alright, so this is it. Problem solved. Alright, we get this output based upon this decision and this math after this input and then assumptions. So what's some other assumptions? Only 2 rates. Only 1 stand. I can't think of another one. Only tomatoes. Alright, so we ask those things, and the reason why we do those assumptions is because if I say, oh, there's only 2 rates, and he goes, yeah, it's a $1 rate and a $2 rate, well, unless they buy 50 pounds, then it's 50 cents a pound. I think, well, then that's the 3rd rate, so I'm going to have to change my solution for that. And so only 1 stand. He goes, yes, well, only 1 stand, but we actually have 4 or 5 stands around, and we want to go ahead and give the grand total of all of them. Again, that changes my solution. So I need to ask these questions to ensure that my solution is correct before I go on and do anything else. All right, so the next thing is the human algorithm, and that's pretty easy. I'm just going to copy everything from my constants down to my output. Control C. And then, just to save some space, I'm going to put it here. Move everything up. Then you can do the same thing. Human algorithm. I ask for 2 separate files, but you can always put 1 file if you want. Alright, so this is my human algorithm. This stays the same. Those are our first 3 steps. And then we have input, and that is number of pounds. And we also have input. How do I get number of pounds twice? What is going on there? Okay, well, I didn't need to have 2 number of pounds, so let's get rid of that. See, that's one of the... Why do we have it in 2 separate ways? I see. I don't know why we have this here. Oh, we got that from output, and then I didn't bother using it here. Oh, see? So this is the reason why we do this. This has to be the same as that. And then I don't need this. We only had 1 input. You probably noticed that while I was making the video and said, what are you doing that for? Well, I'm doing that to show you why we do the human algorithm and the problem statement. I had missed that when I went through. But when I went down here and started doing the human algorithm, I said, well, wait a minute. These are both the same. We don't need this one. And then as we walk through the steps, we can say, oh, okay, well, that makes it easier. I don't need to count the label calculations. So I have a decision, and then I have my math, and then I have my output. See, so you can say that I'm doing these mistakes on purpose, but really these are the common mistakes that you make. So if I do it flawlessly and you make a mistake, so this number of pounds is not right either. I said I fixed it here, but then I didn't fix it down here. So these have to be the same thing, or I have a problem. And actually, I would have noticed that in my flowchart also. My flowchart would not have worked correctly, and then I would have tracked it down. And that's also the reason why we do the flowchart, is to catch any problem we might have with our solution. So every step in the way is making our solution so it's perfect. So by the time we go to code, well, it's pretty easy because we've already tested it a couple of times. So here I'm testing it here. I'm going, well, it doesn't look right, and I fix it. Now we'll flowchart it, see if that works. And how are we doing on time? All right, well, that's about almost 10 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and stop this. So we got a problem statement from the problem. So we take this paragraph and turns it into a problem statement. Then we copied and pasted that into our human algorithm. Well, we found some problems, which is good. That's what we want to do, is find problems here. Oh, and the last thing I'm going to do before we move on is I have to get rid of all my spaces. So I'm just going to go in here and get rid of my spaces, because we're going to be copying and pasting the human algorithm into the flowchart, and it can't have any spaces in any of these names in order to do that. So, and that'll bring us right up to 10 minutes, well, 10.5 minutes. But we learned some valuable lessons. And again, if I miss a space here, no big deal, because that space will come out in my flowchart, because it'll give me a red box saying, hey, you left a space in. All right, good. So this is all done, and we'll move on to the next video.